Chapter 1: The Servant Awakens. When I opened my eyes, the world smelled of blood and burning incense. The sky above was red, not from the sunset, but from fire. Screams echoed through the stone corridors. I blinked, and a flood of memories not my own tore through my head like a blade. I wasn't in my bed. I wasn't in my world. I was inside a novel, The Crimson Path of Vengeance. And worse, I wasn't the hero. I was a servant, one of the nameless shadows that died in the first act, loyal to the villain who was destined to fall. The villain's name was Mo Ran, the Dark Lord, the man whose clan was annihilated by righteous sects, who rose from the ashes to slaughter the cultivators that betrayed him. He was brilliant, ruthless, mad, and doomed. In the story, my character was executed for failing to deliver a message. Death came before Chapter 3. I refused to die that easily. Footsteps approached, soft, deliberate, dragging something heavy. I turned. A man stepped into the courtyard through the rising smoke. His robe was black embroidered with blood-red threads, long hair tied with a silver clasp. His face, pale, sharp, beautiful in the kind of way that could stop your breath and your heartbeat both. In his hand, he carried a blade dripping with crimson. Behind him, a body collapsed to the floor, a middle-aged man gasping his last breath. "Traitor," Mo Ran said quietly. His voice was low, smooth, dangerous. "You sold my men's locations to the righteous dogs. I should let your soul wander, but mercy is wasted on you." He sliced through the air. The man's head rolled across the floor. I didn't breathe. My heart pounded so loudly I thought he'd hear it. Mo Ran's eyes flicked toward me. Crimson chi shimmered faintly around his pupils, a sign of demonic cultivation. "You, why are you still here?" I came to clean the hall, my lord," I stammered, bowing so low my forehead nearly touched the blood-stained tiles. He studied me for a moment that stretched forever. "Your name?" "Li Qing." It wasn't, but it was the name this body carried. If you value your life, learn when to speak and when to vanish." He wiped his blade on the dead man's robe. "Yes, my lord." He turned away, but something about the way his shoulders stiffened caught my attention. The novel never described him from this close. The faint tremor in his hands, the dark circles under his eyes, the exhaustion hiding behind cruelty. That was the first time I saw the real Mo Ran. Not the monster, but the man who'd lost everything and built his hatred into armor. Later that night, I found myself summoned. The hall was silent except for the crackle of the braziers. Mo Ran sat at the end of the long table, reading reports. His robe hung loosely, his collar half open. He didn't look up when he spoke. "You're the new servant. The last one tried to poison me. If you're planning the same, do it now and save us both time," he said. "I wouldn't dare." His gaze lifted. "Everyone dares, sooner or later." He tossed me a small jade bottle. "Clean the blood from the training ground. Burn the remains. Don't let their spirits linger." I caught it clumsily. "Yes, my lord." As I turned to leave, his voice stopped me. "Why didn't you run earlier? You saw me kill a man." I hesitated. The right answer would decide if I lived. I thought, if you wanted me dead, I'd already be. A quiet laugh, almost too soft to be real, escaped him. "Clever." When I stepped outside, the air was cold and sharp. The courtyard still smelled of iron. I looked down at my trembling hands. He was terrifying. And yet, I couldn't stop thinking about the way his voice had softened, almost imperceptibly. Over the next days, I followed him like a shadow, fetching medicine, sharpening blades, learning when to speak, when to vanish. I watched him command with the calm of a storm. I watched him drink alone, eyes distant, whispering names I didn't know. Once, I found him in the shrine, kneeling before an unlit altar. His hands shook as he traced the ashes on the floor. I pretended not to see. In those moments, he didn't look like the Dark Lord who would destroy the world. He looked like a man who'd already lost it. That night, when I bowed to him again, he looked at me longer than before. "You're still here," he murmured. "Yes, my lord." "Then serve me well. If you betray me, I will end you. His eyes flicked up, red in the firelight. I understand. But inside I thought, you won't have to. I already belong to your story. And that was the beginning of my loyalty, the start of my slow descent into his darkness. Chapter 2: The Shadow of the Past. The first lesson I learned serving Mo Ran was this: silence was safer than breath. Every morning, before the mist even left the valley, I swept the blood from the courtyard stones. Demonic cultivators came and went like shadows, their loyalty as thin as smoke. Mo Ran never spoke unless he had to. When he did, it was usually an order or a warning. Still, I watched him. The way he stood at the balcony when the storms rolled in, unmoving. The way he touched the scar on his wrist whenever someone mentioned the righteous sections. He never looked back at his followers. Never called anyone by name. They whispered about him in the dark. Once the son of the Mo clan patriarch, betrayed by his sworn brothers, his entire family slaughtered by righteous blades. But stories always twist themselves around truth. I wanted to know the truth buried underneath. That chance came one night. The moon was hidden, the sky thick with rain. Mo Ran had summoned the core elders to discuss a raid. But when I brought tea into the chamber, the air was tight with argument. They know our location. We must relocate before the Seven-Sect Alliance, one elder said, trembling. Relocate? Did relocation save my clan before? Did running protect my father when he begged for mercy? Mo Ran's voice cut through like a blade. The elder fell silent. Mo Ran's hand tightened around his cup until the porcelain cracked. Cowards. All of you. The tea spilled down his wrist, blood following soon after. He didn't flinch. That was the first time I heard him speak of his past. The pain behind his calm was raw enough to make the room feel smaller. Later that night, I found him alone in the training yard, standing under the rain. His robe clung to his skin, hair loose, sword buried in the mud beside him. Your hand's bleeding, I said quietly. He didn't turn. You should be asleep. I can't. The thunder's too loud. A short silence. Then, it doesn't bother me anymore. I hesitated before stepping closer. Doesn't the past ever? He cut me off. The past is already dead. All that's left is the killing. His eyes caught the lightning. There was something almost boyish in that flash. Not innocence, but the memory of it. For a second, I saw him as the child prodigy people once praised, the one who used to smile in sunlight before it all burned. Then the thunder rolled again, and the expression vanished. The next day, we were ambushed on the mountain path. A dozen assassins in righteous sect robes leapt from the cliffs, swords blazing with spiritual light. Mo Ran reacted before any of us could blink. His demonic chi erupted, a black wave splitting the earth beneath him. He cut down 3 before the 4th's blade grazed his shoulder. I was behind him, unarmed, stupid, human. Instinct took over. I grabbed a fallen spear and threw it with all my strength. It hit one assassin in the throat. Blood sprayed. When it was over, Mo Ran was breathing hard, one knee in the dirt. I rushed to him. Don't touch me, he snapped. You're bleeding. I tore a strip from my robe and pressed it against his shoulder. The wound was deep, pulsing dark red against pale skin. He didn't move as I wrapped it tight. Rain had started to fall again, quiet and thin. Why? He asked. What? Why help me? You think kindness will buy you safety? His tone was flat, but his eyes searched mine. No, but it might buy me sleep, I said. That earned the smallest, strangest thing, the ghost of a smile. It wasn't warm. It wasn't gentle. But it was real. I kept working in silence, tying the bandage, rinsing his sword. He didn't thank me. He didn't need to. The next morning, when I brought him tea, he didn't tell me to leave. That was enough. Days passed. His temper remained sharp, but his words toward me softened by degrees. Small things. You may sit, or stay close. It wasn't affection, but it was something that looked like trust trying to remember how to breathe. But every night, as I cleaned his blade, I thought about that look. And every morning, I told myself it meant nothing. Still, I couldn't forget the rain, the blood, and the faint, broken smile that said more than words ever could. That night, while the storm whispered outside and the candles burned low, I heard his voice through the thin walls. "Father, Mother, I'll make them pay." His tone wasn't rage anymore. It was sorrow carved too deep to heal. I sat there, listening, hands shaking, and I realized then that Mo Ran wasn't a monster born. He was a man remade by grief, sharpened by betrayal, and drowned in a loneliness so heavy it could crush the sky. And for some reason I didn't understand yet, I wanted to carry a piece of that weight with him. Chapter 3: Blood Oath of Loyalty. The night Mo Ran called me to his private chamber, the wind outside sounded like a blade scraping against stone. The torches flickered blue, fed by demonic chi. He stood with his back to me, black robes trailing like spilled ink, staring at the map spread across his table. "Close the door," he said. His tone was soft, too soft. That usually meant something dangerous. I obeyed. He didn't look up when he spoke again. "You saved my life once. I did what any servant should. You talk too much." I bit my tongue. After a long silence, he finally turned. His eyes were dark, bottomless, the kind that made you forget where you were. "From today, you're no longer a servant." I blinked. "Then what am I, my lord?" "My shadow. You will walk where I walk, strike when I strike, and die if I die. No hesitation. No betrayal." He stepped closer, the air thickening with chi. His hand lifted. A drop of his blood shimmered at his fingertip, hovering between us like a crimson flame. "Swear it." I could have refused. I should have refused. But in that moment, looking into his eyes, I felt something heavy anchor in my chest. Loyalty? Fascination? Or maybe something far more dangerous. I cut my palm, let my blood mix with his. The air trembled, and the mark of a binding oath burned faintly into my skin. "I swear to walk in your shadow until it no longer exists," I said quietly. His gaze softened, almost imperceptibly. "Good." That night, he told me of the first artifact we needed to find. The soul-devouring mirror, hidden within the ruins of the cursed abyss, a place even demons feared to tread. We left before dawn, cloaked in mist and the scent of rain. The ruins were far beyond the southern cliffs, buried under centuries of darkness. Bones paved the entrance like offerings. Every step stirred whispers. Mo Ran led, his sword glinting with faint demonic light. "Keep your senses sharp. This place feeds on fear," he warned. "I've got plenty to spare," I muttered. His lips twitched. "Good. It'll keep you alive." The corridors were endless, walls covered with blood-colored sigils, the air thick with cursed energy. When we reached the central chamber, a cracked mirror floated above a pool of black water. Shadows coiled beneath it like serpents. "That's it, the soul-devouring mirror," Mo Ran said. The air shifted. A dozen spirits materialized, shrieking. They lunged. "Stay behind me." Not happening. I wasn't trained for this world. Not really. But my body remembered every spar, every wound, every lesson he'd forced into me. I moved before thinking, slicing through one wraith, then another. Mo Ran's demonic chi surged beside me, black fire roaring like a beast unleashed. He moved with brutal grace, each strike precise, merciless. Still, one of the spirits slipped past him and slammed into my chest. Cold flooded my lungs. Before I could fall, his arm caught me. "Idiot!" he hissed, shoving his own energy into me. Pain exploded down my spine, and the spirit shattered. When the last shadow faded, the chamber went still again. My knees nearly gave out. Mo Ran stood motionless, breathing hard, his sleeve torn and blood running down his arm. "You're hurt," I said. "It's nothing." "Don't you say that every time," I snapped. For a heartbeat, he just stared at me. Not angry, just startled. Then he looked away. "You're reckless." "So are you." Something flickered between us. Half a glare, half a smile. He reached for the mirror. The moment his fingers touched it, black light wrapped around his arm. Demonic chi surged through the air, wild and vicious. I stepped forward instinctively, pressing my palm to his back, pouring what little spiritual energy I had into stabilizing him. He didn't shake me off. For the first time, he leaned on me just slightly. When the light finally dimmed, the mirror sank into his hand like liquid. He straightened, expression unreadable. It's done. By the time we returned to camp, the demonic chi clinging to us was so thick it nearly burned. Mo Ran set up a cleansing formation beside the hot spring behind the cave. "Get in," he said. I froze. "What?" "The mirror's energy can't be washed away with water alone. The longer it stays, the more it eats at the soul." His gaze cut through me. "Unless you'd rather die painfully?" I sighed. "You make it sound like I have a choice." The water steamed faintly. I slipped in first, the warmth biting against my bruises. Mo Ren followed silently, the surface rippling around him. The moonlight turned the steam silver, blurring the edges of the world. For a long time, neither of us spoke. I could feel his presence beside me. Steady, controlled, almost calm. Then I noticed the faint tremor in his hand as he wiped the blood from his wrist. "Does it ever stop hurting?" I asked quietly. "What?" "The things you remember." He was silent for a moment. "No, but you learn to breathe through the pain." I nodded even though he wasn't looking. The air between us felt different. Not warm, not cold, just real. When he finally stood, the water sliding off his skin like glass, he said softly, "You fought well today." I blinked. That almost sounded like praise. "It was an observation, right? Still counts." I smirked. He paused at the edge of the pool, his back to me. "You're the only one who hasn't run from me yet. Don't make me regret trusting you," he said quietly. "I won't." "Good." He left without another word. I stayed in the water a little longer, staring at the moon's reflection trembling on the surface. My body ached, but my chest felt heavier still. I told myself it was loyalty, but deep down I knew it was something else entirely. Chapter 4: The Smile He Shouldn't Have. They said Mo Ran never laughed. Not the cruel kind that demons carried like armor. Not the empty one that followed slaughter, never. The Dark Lord didn't waste breath on things that didn't feed his vengeance. I believed that too, until the night I saw him smile. It began the way all of his killings did, without warning. We were in the war tent, the scent of damp earth and burning incense heavy in the air. One of Mo Ran's oldest allies, Elder Chu, had come crawling back after months of absence. His robe was spotless, his bow deep, his smile too polished. "My lord, I have news of the righteous sect movements. I risked my life to bring this," Chu said, voice slick with false reverence. Mo Ran didn't move from his seat. The candlelight traced the edge of his jaw, his eyes half-lidded in that deceptive calm. "You risked nothing, you delivered them my movements instead," he said. The tent went cold. Chu's smile froze. "My lord, I would never." "Then why did my outpost fall the same day you disappeared?" Mo Ran asked. He rose, slow, graceful, terrifying. The chain of his sword charm jingled faintly as he approached. I was captured. They forced." The blade flashed once. The next sound was a body hitting the floor. The others didn't dare breathe. Mo Ran wiped his sword on Chu's robe and sat back down, expression unchanging. "Clean this up," he said. His tone was the same one he used when asking for tea. I should have felt numb by now. I'd seen him kill before, for betrayal, for threats, sometimes for mere suspicion. But this time, something inside me twisted. When everyone else hurried to drag the corpse away, I stayed where I was. I don't know why. Maybe I was waiting for him to justify it. Maybe I wanted to hear something human. He noticed my silence. "You disapprove?" I met his eyes. He begged for mercy. Mercy? Did my father get mercy when they slit his throat? Did my mother, when they burned her alive before me? Mo Ran repeated, almost like the word offended him. I had no answer. The flicker of flame in his gaze dimmed into something hollow. "Those who betray me die. That's not cruelty. That's order." He looked away, and for the briefest moment, I thought he seemed tired, not from fighting but from remembering. Later that night, after the blood was scrubbed away, we ate in silence. The others avoided him, whispering that his wrath was close to breaking. I stayed. Someone had to bring the food, and apparently, I was too stupid to fear him properly. He didn't speak until halfway through the meal. You should learn to use that sword properly. I blinked. My sword. You hold it like a broom, come, he said dryly. He stood and walked to the clearing behind the tent. The moonlight painted his figure in silver. I followed, unsure if this was training or punishment. He tossed me a wooden blade. Attack me. I'd rather not die tonight. If you don't, you'll die tomorrow. Attack. So I did. My strikes were clumsy, predictable. He parried each one lazily, correcting me with sharp flicks of his wrist. Too high. Don't lock your elbow. Step through the motion, not around it. Easier said than done, I muttered. His gaze narrowed. Then, before I could react, he moved behind me, close enough that I could feel the faint heat of his breath at my neck. His hand slid down my arm, adjusting my grip. Like this, feel the weight. Let the blade guide your balance. My heart stumbled. I told myself it was because he was the most dangerous man alive, not because of the way his voice dropped low when he spoke. He stepped back. Again. I struck. This time, the motion was cleaner, smoother. He nodded. Better. It wasn't praise exactly, but it was something. We kept at it until the stars began to fade. My shoulders burned. My palms ached. And M.O. Rant's usually immaculate hair had fallen loose around his face. When he finally called it, we were both breathing hard. He looked at me. Not as his servant, not even as his shadow, but something else I couldn't name. Then, for the first time, the corner of his mouth curved upward. Just barely. A smile that wasn't cruel or mocking. Just faint, almost forgotten. You learn quickly, he said. I have a good teacher, I answered before I could stop myself. He turned away, but I saw it. That fleeting warmth breaking through the ice, gone almost as soon as it appeared. The next morning, he was the Dark Lord again, composed and distant. No one else would have believed he'd smiled at all. But I couldn't forget it. That small, dangerous moment haunted me through every battle and every silence that followed. Maybe that's when it began, the thing I refused to name. I told myself it was loyalty, gratitude, but the truth settled deeper, heavier. Every time his hand brushed mine. Every time his eyes softened just for me. And I think even then M.O. Rant knew. Chapter 5, The Second Artifact, Bone Crystal Flame. We reached the Valley of the Scorched Bones 3 days after the snow began to fall. The cold was sharp enough to cut through armor, but the valley itself burned with heat that never faded. They said 1,000 years ago, a god fell here. His divine fire devoured the mountain, leaving behind a flame that could melt souls. M.O. Rant called it the Bone Crystal Flame, the second artifact we needed. He stood at the edge of the crater, eyes fixed on the molten pit below. The righteous sects will come. They won't let me claim it. You sound almost pleased, I said. I am. The more they resist, the more they prove they fear me. That should have scared me, didn't. We descended into the valley as the wind howled around us. The smell of sulfur and charred earth thickened with every step. M.O. Rant's black robes caught the firelight, making him look like something carved out of darkness itself. When we reached the heart of the crater, a voice cut through the heat. So it's true, a young man sneered, stepping out from the shadows. His robe gleamed with the golden crest of the Azure Spirit sect. The demon lord himself crawling through ash for scraps of power. M.O. Rant's expression didn't change. You must be Ling Zhao, son of the sect master who ordered my family's death. Ling Zhao smirked. Your clan was corrupt. Cleansing you was an act of righteousness. Then righteousness is filthier than I thought. M.O. Rant moved. One heartbeat he stood still. The next his blade was at Ling Zhao's throat. Sparks burst as their chi clashed. Black against gold, demonic energy against celestial flame. The ground cracked beneath their feet. I'd seen M.O. Rant fight before, but never like this. His movements were poetry written in blood. Every strike was precise, merciless, beautiful in a way that made it hard to look away. Ling Zhao fought fiercely, righteous light swirling around him, but Mo Ran's blade carved through it like smoke. When Ling Zhao fell to his knees, bleeding and panting, Mo Ran lowered his sword, not out of mercy, but because he was done playing. End it, then you'll never escape the heavens' punishment. Ling Zhao spat. Mo Ran's eyes glowed faintly red. I don't need the heavens' forgiveness. He raised his hand, and the air itself screamed. The ground split open, and a column of white fire erupted, swirling into his palm, the bone crystal flame. It wrapped around Ling Zhao like a serpent, devouring him from the inside out. The smell of burning flesh filled the air. His screams didn't last long. When it was over, only ash remained. Mo Ren stood amid the ruin, the flame pulsing faintly in his hand. His face was unreadable, but the tremor in his shoulders betrayed the cost. I stepped closer. You shouldn't have used that power. He turned sharply. Do you think I care about what I should or shouldn't? No, but it's eating you alive, I said quietly. His jaw tightened. For a moment I thought he'd strike me. Then he looked away. Leave me. I didn't. That night, he meditated in silence, the bone crystal flame burning within the formation circle he'd drawn on the ground. His chi was unstable, laced with rage and exhaustion. Blood trickled from his nose, unnoticed. I sat outside his chamber, listening to his uneven breathing. Every so often, I heard a sharp intake of air, a pained sound he tried to smother. He was fighting not just the flame but his own hatred and losing. When dawn came, I slipped inside. He was slumped against the wall, eyes closed, skin pale, hands still faintly smoking. Get out, he rasped. I will, after you stop pretending you're immortal, I said. He gave a soft, humorless laugh, the kind that didn't reach his eyes. You talk to me like you're not afraid. I'm not. He looked up, and for once, I saw something raw there. Not fury, not pride, just fatigue. A deep, bone-deep weariness that made him look younger, almost fragile. You should be, he whispered. I stepped closer, kneeling in front of him. Rest. I'll keep watch. His lips parted like he wanted to argue, but the fight had gone out of him. His eyes closed. For a long while, I just sat there, listening to the slow, steady rhythm of his breathing. The night outside was cold, but the air near him was still warm, humming faintly with demonic energy. At some point, his head tilted, resting lightly against my shoulder. I froze. He murmured something low, broken. I leaned closer. Qing, my name. It wasn't a command. It wasn't anger. It was soft, almost gentle. I didn't know what to do with that, so I stayed still, guarding his sleep until dawn broke over the valley, painting everything in shades of crimson and gold. When he woke, the mask was back, composed, sharp, distant. He stood without meeting my gaze. We leave at noon. Yes, my lord. He turned to go, then paused. Last night. I waited. Forget it, he said finally, walking away. But I couldn't forget. Not the exhaustion in his eyes, not the sound of my name on his lips, not the way the firelight had traced his scars like constellations. For the first time since I'd fallen into this world, I realized I wasn't just following him out of duty. It was devotion, dangerous, foolish, absolute, and it was already too late to turn back. Chapter 6, The Temple of Echoing Blood. The wind in the mountains howled like a living thing. The higher we climbed, the heavier the air became, thick with resentment, soaked in the copper tang of old blood. The map Mo Ren carried was written in symbols that twisted when you looked too long, carved in the bone of some ancient beast. He said the third artifact was hidden here, deep inside the Temple of Echoing Blood. No one who entered had ever returned. By the second day, the color had drained from his face. The wound he took from the bone crystal flame hadn't healed properly. He hid it behind silence and pride, but I saw the truth in every stiff movement. You should rest, I told him as we stopped by a stream. I don't need rest, he said, voice steady but too low. I crouched beside him, eyeing the blood seeping through his sleeve. You're lying. He looked at me then, not angry, not cold, just tired. If I stop, the trail grows cold, and we can't afford that. Then lean on me. He frowned. You forget who I am. I forget nothing, but even a demon bleeds, I said quietly. For a moment, the only sound was the water rushing between us. Then, without another word, he let me pull his arm around my shoulder. The weight of him was heavier than I expected. Not his body, but everything he carried. By the time we reached the temple, night had fallen. The sky was red as fresh wounds. The gates stood half buried in stone, carved with faces frozen in silent screams. Each step inside echoed back twice, once in sound, once in spirit. The name fits, I muttered. Mo Rant's lips curved faintly. Everything here remembers pain. We moved through the halls cautiously. The walls pulsed faintly, as if the temple itself were breathing. Statues lined the path. Monks, warriors, priests. Their eyes hollow, their hands stained with dried blood. At the center stood an altar. On it, a crystal heart floated in midair, glowing with a soft red light. I could feel the power radiating from it, the heart of blood echo, the third artifact. Stay back. It reacts to spiritual force, Mo Rand said. He stepped forward, and the temple came alive. The statues' mouths opened, shrieking in voices not their own. Blood streamed down the walls. Chains of crimson energy lashed from the altar, wrapping around him. Mo ran, I shouted. He didn't answer. His sword flared black, clashing against the chains, but they tightened, sinking into his skin. His knees hit the ground. Without thinking, I ran forward. The chains struck me too, slicing across my back, but I forced myself through them. When I reached him, his body was trembling, the demonic chi in him twisting out of control. Stop, you'll be, he gasped. I grabbed his hand. Shut up. Drawing in every bit of energy I could gather, I pressed my palm to his chest and sent my chi into him, steadying his flow. The force nearly ripped me apart. His energy was like fire and shadow fused together, wild and hungry. But if I let go, he'd die. The pain blurred my vision. I focused only on the sound of his breathing, forcing his energy to calm, merging it with mine until the violent storm began to still. Slowly, the chains retracted. The blood on the walls sank back into stone. The crystal heart dimmed. Mo Ran collapsed forward, catching himself on one arm. I stayed where I was, still holding his hand, too dizzy to stand. Fool, why would you do that? He murmured. To stop you from dying. You could have killed yourself. I'll risk it again if I have to. He stared at me then, not with anger, but with something heavier. His breathing was uneven. Why? Why do you stay? I looked at him, every answer I shouldn't say burning in my throat. Because you're the only one worth following. Something flickered in his expression. Surprise, confusion, something close to pain. He turned his face away. You shouldn't say things you don't understand. I understand enough. He said nothing after that. I helped him back to camp. His body was weak from the strain, so I sat beside him through the night. He fell asleep before the fire burned low, his breathing shallow but steady. For a while I just watched him, without the sharpness in his eyes. He looked almost peaceful, younger, softer, unbearably human. And somehow, sitting there beside him, I realized I didn't just want to follow him anymore. I wanted to be the reason he stopped walking into the dark, even if that meant losing myself to it with him. Chapter 7: The Heaven-Crushing Blade. They called him the Demon Emperor now. The name spread like wildfire across the cultivation world, whispered in fear and awe. To me, he was still just Mo Ran, the man who never slept, who bore his pain like armor, who smiled once in 1,000 nights. But even I couldn't deny it. He'd become something beyond mortal. The forging took 7 days and 7 nights. The artifacts we'd gathered, the soul-devouring mirror, the bone crystal flame, and the heart of blood echo, were fused atop a mountain of black iron. Each day the earth shook. Each night lightning crawled across the sky. Emorin stood within the storm, his body drenched in rain and chi, channeling the essence of all three relics into the blade he named Tianjin, the heaven-crushing sword. I watched from the edge of the ritual circle, heart pounding with both awe and dread. His robes were torn, his hair loose, his blood mingling with the molten metal. The power radiating from him made the air crackle. It was enough to destroy entire sects. When he struck the final seal, the world itself seemed to hold its breath. Then silence. The sword's cry split the night sky, a deep, resonant sound that shivered through my bones. Mo ran staggered, gripping the weapon. The black blade gleamed faintly red, alive with a pulse like a heartbeat. I ran to him. "You did it." He smiled faintly, lips pale. "No, we did." Before I could speak, he pressed the sword into my hands. It burned cold. I felt its hunger, its need for destruction. "Hold it, tell me what you see," he said. I focused, and in an instant, I saw cities burning, rivers turning crimson, the righteous sects bowing before a throne of corpses. I dropped the blade. "It shows what will come, if I let it," Mo Ran said. His voice was calm, but there was something in his eyes, a shadow of horror, quickly buried. "Then don't," I said. He looked at me, a hint of sadness crossing his face. Some things were set in motion long before I began to hate. In the days that followed, the world moved against him. The Righteous Alliance sent armies to the borders of his domain. Sect masters swore to purge him and the abomination he carried. And yet they feared him. None dared strike first. Within his fortress, I led his forces, demons, exiles, cultivators who'd been cast out by their own. Mo Ran rarely left his chamber, spending hours communing with Tianjin. But I felt his gaze on me even when he was gone. When rumors of traitors reached us, I dealt with them myself. My blade grew heavier with each life I took, but I never hesitated. Not for him. That night, after the executions, I found him standing on the balcony overlooking the mountains. The moonlight cut across his face, pale and distant. "You killed them," he said. "They betrayed you." He nodded slowly. "And what if I fall next?" I met his gaze. "Then I'll follow you into hell." He huffed a quiet laugh. Real, this time soft enough to sting. "You shouldn't say such things." "Why not? It's true." He turned away, hiding a faint smile. "You're too loyal for your own good. Someone has to be." Later, when the fortress fell silent, he called me to the training yard. "Show me what you've learned," he said, unsheathing Tianjin. The blade shimmered in the dark, swallowing the starlight. We circled each other, the night air sharp with energy. When our swords met, sparks burst like tiny meteors. He was faster, stronger, but I'd spent months watching him fight. I knew his rhythm, the way his breath caught just before a killing blow. He feinted left. I blocked. He twisted his wrist, blade sliding past mine. I stepped in, closing the distance. Our chi clashed, the impact shaking the stones beneath us. "Not bad," he said. "But your stance." He reached out, fingers brushing my shoulder to correct my posture. His hand lingered, steady, warm despite the cold. "Here," he murmured, guiding my arm lower. "Feel the balance. Let the blade follow your intent." I swallowed. "Like this." "Exactly." Our eyes met for a moment too long. His breath ghosted against my cheek. The world narrowed. Just the two of us, swords locked, moonlight caught between us. Then he stepped back, clearing his throat. Again. We sparred until sweat soaked our robes, until laughter slipped between our strikes like something forbidden but real. He laughed. Really laughed. For the first time I could remember, and it almost broke me. When I finally collapsed, he stood over me, breathing hard, smiling faintly. "You've improved. Is that a compliment? Don't let it go to your head." He offered me his hand. I took it. His grip was firm, grounding. For a heartbeat, I wished time would stop, that the world outside, the hatred, the blood, could just disappear. But it didn't, because when he looked past me, back toward the mountains, his eyes hardened again. "They'll come soon," he said. "The sections. The ones who destroyed everything. Then we'll be ready," I told him. He looked back at me, the faintest ghost of warmth in his expression. "You make it sound so simple." "It is. You lead. I protect." He shook his head, but the corner of his mouth lifted. "Then stay close, my shadow. Always." The word burned in my throat, but I didn't say it, because I already knew. For him, I would walk through every battlefield, every sin, every darkness, until the end. Chapter 8: The Storm Before the Fall. The air changed before the armies even came. You could feel it, heavy, metallic, like the world was holding its breath. Messengers brought news every hour. Sect banners gathering in the east, envoys demanding surrender, self-righteous speeches wrapped in divine scripture. The so-called Alliance of Light had united under one goal: to erase Mo Ran from existence. He stood on the fortress walls, cloaks snapping in the wind, watching storm clouds swallow the sky. The black iron below us hummed with demonic energy. From here, you could see the valleys burning with the campfires of those who called themselves righteous. They think numbers will save them. They've forgotten what fear tastes like. Mo Ran said softly. His tone was calm, but his eyes told another story. The sleepless nights, the sudden bursts of rage. They were all getting worse. Since forging Tianjin, the demonic sword had begun to whisper to him, feeding on his hatred. I'd seen him argue with the air, hands trembling, pupils flickering red, and yet he still ruled like a god. That night, the Council of Generals gathered to discuss strategy. One of them, a man named Xuefun, dared to question his orders. "My lord," Xue said, bowing low, "if we open the western pass, we can draw them into the valley and—" "Did I ask for your opinion?" Mo Ran's voice cut through the hall like a blade. The man flinched. "No, my lord, I only—" The sound of steel, a flash of crimson. Xuefun's body hit the floor before anyone could move. Mo Ran wiped Tianjin clean, eyes cold and distant. "If any of you doubt me again, join him," he said. No one spoke after that. When the hall emptied, I stayed behind, standing beside the blood-stained dais. "You didn't have to kill him," I said quietly. He turned toward me, expression unreadable. He hesitated. Hesitation spreads like rot. "And fear. That too, but fear keeps them loyal," he murmured, voice softening. His hand trembled slightly as he set the sword down. I saw the faintest flicker of regret before he hid it behind a smile that didn't reach his eyes. That night, I woke to a sound. A low, strangled gasp echoing down the corridor. I followed it to his chamber. The door was half open. He was on the floor, drenched in sweat, the sword lying beside him. His breath came in ragged bursts, eyes unfocused. Mo Ran. I dropped to my knees, shaking his shoulders. He didn't answer. The air around him pulsed with demonic chi so thick it burned my lungs. I grabbed his wrist, channeling my own energy into him, trying to steady the wild flow tearing through his veins. "Enough, you're safe. It's just me," I whispered. Gradually, his breathing slowed. The crimson faded from his eyes. He blinked up at me, disoriented. "Qing, I'm here." He looked at me as though seeing me for the first time, confusion giving way to something fragile. "I saw them," he said hoarsely. "All of them. My clan. My mother's face. Every night they burn again." He laughed, low, broken. "Do you know what's worst? I can't remember her voice anymore." I didn't know what to say. Words felt useless. So I did the only thing I could. I pulled him against me. He resisted for a heartbeat, then let go, his forehead pressing against my shoulder. For a long time, we stayed like that, two silhouettes in the dark, surrounded by the quiet hum of cursed power. "If I die, you must live," he murmured suddenly, voice almost too soft to hear. The words pierced through me. "Don't say that," I whispered. "You will live. Someone has to remember me. Someone who knew what I really was." He insisted. I clenched my fists. "You're not going to die." He gave a faint smile, tired, haunting. Everyone dies, Ching. Then I'll die after you. His hand tightened briefly in my sleeve. Fool. We stayed that way until the first light bled through the curtains. When he finally pulled away, his usual composure had returned. But his eyes lingered on me a second too long, and that was enough. In the days that followed, his paranoia deepened. He trusted no one except me. I became his right hand, his messenger, his executioner. When he left his chambers, I was the one who walked behind him. When he slept, I stood guard. The others feared me almost as much as they feared him. Maybe they were right to. One evening, while I helped him fasten his armor, he said quietly, "If the Alliance breaks through the gates, you will lead the retreat." I paused. "And leave you behind?" He met my gaze, expression unreadable. "Yes, I won't." "You will, that's an order," he said firmly. I smiled, hollow and small. "You know I don't follow orders when they're wrong." He looked away, exhaling through his nose. "You never learn." "From you, I learned everything." That earned me the faintest laugh, a sound like wind through ashes. "Then I've doomed you." "Too late for that," I said. That night, lightning crawled across the horizon. From the ramparts, I could see the distant glow of the Allied camps. Thousands of torches flickering like stars ready to fall. The storm was coming. The world would end soon, one way or another. Ren stood beside me, silent, the wind tearing through his hair. "Tomorrow the heavens will judge us," he said. I turned to him. "Then let's give them something worth remembering." He didn't answer, but his hand brushed mine. Just once, deliberate grounding. In that fleeting touch, there was everything. Trust, sorrow, promise. He didn't need to say anything more, and neither did I. Because I had already made my vow. Not to the heavens, not to righteousness, but to him alone. I would not let him die, even if the world burned for it. Chapter 9. The Final Battle at Blood Moon Cliff. The sky bled crimson long before the first blade fell. They said it was an omen, that even the heavens couldn't bear to watch what was coming. From the cliffs above the fortress, I could see them. Banners of the 6 great sects, stretching to the horizon like a tide of white and gold, tens of thousands strong. Their chants rolled through the valley, thunderous and cold. Ren stood before them, black robes snapping in the wind, his hair unbound, eyes burning with defiance. He looked like a god that the heavens themselves had abandoned. "They've brought the whole world," I said, my voice barely steady. "Then the world can die with them," he replied. Tianjin shimmered in his hand, pulsing like a living heart. Its demonic chi surged so violently that even standing near him burned my skin. He turned to me. "You will not leave my side." "Never planned to." Something flickered in his eyes. Pride, maybe, or fear. Then he raised his sword toward the sky. "Let the heavens watch," he whispered. And the world exploded. The Alliance struck first, hurling 1,000 spells at once. Lightning, flame, and divine light rained down, shattering the fortress walls. I leapt forward, cutting down the first wave of cultivators, but there were too many. The air smelled of smoke and iron. Ren descended into the fray like vengeance made flesh. Each swing of Tianjin ripped open the ground. His chi swallowed the light, turning the battlefield into a sea of shadows. The screams of the righteous filled the cliffs. "Demon Emperor! Monster!" they cried. He answered with silence and slaughter. Bodies fell in hundreds. Rivers of blood streamed down the slopes. Every strike he unleashed burned years from his life, but he didn't stop. He couldn't. When I reached him again, his breathing was ragged. A blade of holy light had torn through his shoulder, searing flesh to bone. Ren. He turned, blood dripping down his jaw, eyes bright and wild. "Stay back." Another blast struck, a combined spell from the 6 sect masters. It hit him square in the chest, and for the first time he staggered. I didn't think, I just ran. The world blurred. I reached him as he fell, catching him before he hit the ground. "Don't you dare close your eyes," I said, pressing my hand over the wound, pouring my chi into him. He smiled faintly, blood at the corner of his mouth. The next wave came, arrows of light, each one humming with deadly intent. Ran lifted a trembling hand, summoning a black barrier that shielded us both. The impact shook the earth. When it cleared, I realized what he'd done. He'd taken the brunt of it himself. His skin was scorched, his breathing shallow. Why? Why protect me? I whispered. He reached up weakly, his fingers brushing my face. Because you were the only one who never betrayed me. The words hit harder than any blade. His touch was warm, trembling. You shouldn't have stayed, you should have run, he murmured. Don't tell me that now. You said you'd make them pay. You promised. My voice broke. He laughed softly, a sound that was more breath than life. Then finish it for me. I shook my head violently. No, you're going to live. Ching. His eyes found mine, softer than I'd ever seen them, stripped of pride, of rage, of everything but quiet sorrow. Don't waste the gift I gave you. What gift? He smiled faintly. My last heart. And then the light in his eyes dimmed. Ran. The wind howled. Above us, the blood moon reached its peak. Scarlet petals, the cursed blossoms that grew only on these cliffs, began to fall, drifting down like snow. They landed on his hair, on his chest, on the blood staining my hands. I held him tighter, pressing my forehead to his. His body was cooling fast. The air around us crackled with the remnants of his power, fading with every breath I took. I told you, I whispered, my throat raw. I wouldn't let you die. But he was already gone. The battlefield below had fallen silent. Even the righteous cultivators, those who had sworn to destroy him, hesitated, watching the demon emperor's body lie still in the arms of a nameless servant. Their victory tasted like ash. I didn't hear when they began to retreat, didn't feel the rain when it started to fall. I only felt the weight of him in my arms, the warmth draining from his skin, the faint echo of his last words haunting the hollow of my chest. You were the only one who never betrayed me. I closed his eyes gently, my hands shaking. The blood moon burned above us, red and merciless. I stayed like that until dawn, holding him, listening to the storm fade, waiting for a heartbeat that never returned. When the first light broke across the cliffs, I rose, carrying him toward the edge where the wind was strongest. The petals swirled around us like the ghosts of all he'd lost. Rest, I'll finish it, I said softly, and when I looked out over the burning horizon, I swore, with every drop of blood left in me, that the world that killed him would burn, too. Chapter 10: The Silence After. When the sky turned gray, I realized I hadn't moved in hours. Ran's body lay across my lap, cold now. The blood had dried in black streaks down his jaw, and the wind carried the scent of ash from the battlefield below. The storm had passed. The world was quiet, too quiet. The righteous sects called it victory. I called it desecration. I heard their voices before I saw them. Disciples picking through the ruins, their laughter cutting through the mist. Is that the demon's corpse? The heavens truly bless us, one asked. Bring it down, the elders want his head as proof, said another. My blood turned to ice. I rose, slowly, carefully laying Ran down on the scorched earth. His face was calm now, almost peaceful, the way he never looked in life. Don't look, you've seen enough, I whispered. Then I turned toward the voices. They didn't see me until it was too late. Tianjin, his sword, was still warm where he had dropped it. When I lifted it, the blade pulsed, recognizing my hand. Black chi flared from its core, coiling around my arm like smoke. The first cultivator barely had time to gasp before the blade split him in two. The others shouted, tried to draw their weapons, but the sword moved faster than thought, tore through them like paper. The ground shook, the air thickened with screams and the iron stink of blood. When it was over, the silence returned. But it wasn't the same silence as before. This one breathed slow, hungry, alive. I fell to my knees beside Ran again. My hands trembled, slick with blood that wasn't his. They'll come for you again. Even dead. They'll try to erase you, I said hoarsely. The thought made something inside me snap. The world blurred. My chest burned. My heart, the one that had followed him through every darkness, cracked open. I screamed. It wasn't a cry for help. It was a sound torn out of something beyond human. The cliffs echoed with it, a sound of grief so raw the air itself seemed to bleed. Somewhere, deep within me, Tianjin responded. Its black light exploded outward, swallowing the valley in shadow. When I came to, the bodies of the remaining sect disciples lay scattered like dolls. The sword hummed softly in my hand, whispering in a voice I didn't recognize. Kill them all. The words didn't frighten me. They felt right. I looked down at Mo Rant's face one last time. They'll pay, all of them, I promised quietly. I wiped the blood from his lips with my sleeve. The wind tugged at his hair, as if trying to carry him away. No, not yet, I murmured. I wrapped his body in his cloak, the same black silk that once made the world tremble, and carried him on my back down the cliff. Each step felt heavier than the last, but I couldn't leave him behind. At the foot of the mountain, I found a small cave, hidden by mist and vines. I laid him inside carefully, lighting a single lantern. The glow made his face look almost alive. I'll come back when it's done, I said. When I stepped out again, the world had changed. Or maybe I had. The sects had lit pyres across the horizon, celebrating their victory. I could hear their chants carried by the wind. Justice has triumphed. The demon is dead. I tightened my grip on Tianjin until my knuckles turned white. Justice. That word used to mean something. Now it only tasted like blood. I turned my back on the pyres and started walking. The rain began to fall again, soft at first, then heavier, washing away the last traces of his scent from my hands. Each step forward felt wrong without him beside me. The world seemed emptier, colorless. Even the sky had gone dull. But I could still hear his voice, the way he'd said my name, the weight of his final words. You were the only one who never betrayed me. I won't, not ever, I whispered to the night. The rain stopped suddenly. The wind shifted. And for the first time, I felt the sword's power sink into me completely. It wasn't Mo Rant's blade anymore. It was mine. The chi that poured through me was cold and bottomless, like standing on the edge of the abyss. I didn't resist it. I let it consume me. If this was what it meant to be a demon, then so be it. I would become everything they feared. I would be his shadow, not the servant who followed him, but the vengeance that would finish what he started. As I left Blood Moon Cliff behind, I didn't look back. The lantern in the cave flickered once and went out. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was a promise. That night, a new name began to spread across the cultivation world, whispered by survivors and written in fear. They said the demon emperor's shadow had risen. They said the servant had vanished, leaving behind only a trail of corpses and a black sword that drank light. They were wrong about one thing. I wasn't his shadow anymore. I had become his echo, the silence after the storm, the grief that never dies. And soon, the world that killed him would learn that silence can be louder than screams. Chapter 11: The Birth of the New Demon Lord. The first thing I learned about vengeance is that it has a heartbeat. It doesn't roar. It doesn't scream. It whispers, steady, cold, patient, until it replaces your own. By the time I left Blood Moon Cliff, mine was already gone. I wandered through ruins and grave smoke, my body half dead, my mind sharper than ever. The sword, Tianjin, pulsed with Mo Rant's lingering chi, sometimes whispering his name, sometimes whispering mine. It didn't matter which. The two had already begun to blur. They called him the Demon Emperor. They would call me his ghost. The first sect to fall was the Silver Frost Pavilion, one of the 6 that had struck the killing blow. Their mountain fortress gleamed like ice in the dawn light. I remember thinking how beautiful it looked, before I set it aflame. The guards didn't recognize me at first. I still wore the servant's robes, blood-stained and torn. I could have walked past them unnoticed, but I didn't want to. One of them blocked my path. Who are you? State your. The blade answered before I did. When Tianjin struck, the snow turned red. I moved through them silently, each step carving another name off my list. The sword fed on my fury, its glow growing darker, thicker, until it seemed to breathe. By the time I reached the inner sanctum, the pavilion was collapsing. Flames licked up the frozen spires, melting the purity their sect had prided itself on. Inside, the sect leader waited, an old man in white, trembling, holding a staff carved with righteous seals. Your Mo Rant's servant, the dog that carried his cloak. He hissed. I said, stepping closer. Now I carry his will. He tried to summon his spiritual energy, but the demonic chi around me choked it before it could form. The seals on his staff cracked one by one. Stop this madness, he shouted. The heavens will not. The heavens watched when you murdered his clan. Tell me, did they look away when his mother begged for her life? I said quietly. The old man froze. I saw recognition, then guilt. Her last words were his name. I continued. Tianjin flared. The sword didn't slice this time, it devoured. When I withdrew it, nothing was left but ash. The fire spread through the pavilion, consuming scripture, weapons, disciples. All of it. I stood in the middle of the inferno, the sword humming like a heartbeat against my palm. In the reflection of the flames, I caught a glimpse of myself. My eyes, once brown, now glowed faint red. My aura had thickened into something black and endless. For a moment, I thought I saw him standing beside me. Mo ran, silent, expression unreadable. I whispered, I told you I'd finish it. The illusion smiled faintly, then vanished into the smoke. That night, word spread across the cultivation world. The servant lives. The servant kills. The demon emperor's shadow walks again. They started calling me Mo Rant's Echo, then the second demon lord. I didn't deny it. When the survivors of Silver Frost tried to describe what they'd seen, their voices shook. He looked like Mo Ran reborn, they said. Same blade, same power, same fury. They were right. Even the heavens seemed to sense it. Storms gathered wherever I walked, lightning cutting through the clouds in the shape of black wings. But vengeance is a lonely thing. At night, when the killing stopped, I would sit beneath the trees and polish Tianjin. Its dark light reflected my face, and sometimes his. Am I doing it right? Would you approve? I'd whisper to the sword, half hoping the wind would answer. The blade vibrated softly, as if mocking me. I didn't care. I kept moving. The next sect fell within days. Azure Wind Hall. I found their leader meditating, surrounded by talismans meant to repel demons. When he opened his eyes and saw me, he flinched like he'd seen a ghost. Mo Ran, he whispered. I almost laughed. Not quite, but close enough. I killed him slowly, not out of cruelty but out of ritual. Each strike a reminder, each scream a hymn to the dead. When it was over, I stood among the corpses and realized something. My chi had changed again. It no longer lashed out wildly. It flowed, controlled, heavy, like his. The sword's hum settled into my bones. My movements mirrored the ones he used to make, the tilt of his wrist, the way his robe swayed after each strike. Somewhere deep inside, I understood what I had become. Not his servant, not his shadow, but his continuation. The demon emperor had died. The demon lord was born. I didn't bother choosing a new name. When the cultivators whispered my presence across the lands, they called me Mo Ran, and I didn't correct them. Let the world believe he lived again. Let them tremble at the name they tried to erase. One night, as I rested in an abandoned temple, I felt a presence brush against my mind. Faint, familiar. His chi. For a heartbeat, it felt like he was sitting beside me again. His voice low and steady. You've gone too far, it said. I closed my eyes. No, I haven't gone far enough, I whispered. When I opened them again, the vision was gone. But the sword still pulsed gently, as if agreeing. By dawn I was gone too. The world would wake to find another sect destroyed, another temple burned, another elder slain. They would say the demon emperor's soul had returned to finish what death couldn't. And in a way they'd be right, because every time I killed, I could almost feel his hand guiding mine. Calm, assured, inevitable. Every swing of Tianjin whispered the same promise through my veins. The shadow lives on. Chapter 12, Crimson Retribution. Blood has a sound. It doesn't drip, it sings. A slow, steady rhythm that fills the silence between screams. By now, I've learned to hear it clearly. The Radiant Heart sect had once been one of the proud six that struck Mo ran down. They called themselves purifiers of evil. The irony made me laugh when I walked through their gates. The moon was high, pale against clouds that looked like bruises. The sect's disciples lay sprawled across the courtyard, their blood soaking the sacred sigils carved into the stone. The air stank of smoke and talismans burnt to ash. I dragged their elder through it all. A man whose silver hair was now matted with blood and fear. His robe bore the mark of command, but his eyes held only terror. "You were there, Blood Moon Cliff. I remember your voice," I said quietly, pushing him to his knees before the shattered temple altar. He spat weakly, defiant even in defeat. "The demon deserved to die. You all did." I smiled, though it didn't reach my eyes. "Then perhaps you'll enjoy dying the same way he did." Tianjin gleamed darkly beside me, its edge humming with a sound like breathing. The sword seemed eager. I didn't need to call on it. It moved with me now like another limb. I reached into my sleeve and pulled out a glowing talisman, one of their own. I pressed it to his chest. It hissed as it met flesh, searing the sect's emblem into his heart. His scream echoed through the hall. I didn't stop. Each question I asked, each cut I gave, was another verse in the hymn of vengeance. The sound of tearing cloth, cracking bone. It all blurred into rhythm. Who led the strike? The council, the righteous summit. Names. I don't know. I swear. I pressed the blade deeper. Lie again, and I'll let the sword drink what's left of your soul. He sobbed. Elder Wu. It was Elder Wu who. I drove the sword through his shoulder. Too late. The dark chi consumed him from the inside out, his body crumbling into dust. When it was done, I sat down beside what was left of him and stared at my hands. They were shaking. Not from guilt, I'd burned that away long ago, but from recognition. This was exactly how Mo Ran had looked once, in the stories I remembered from the novel. The same cruelty, the same stillness afterward. Back then, I'd pitied him. Now I understood him. Maybe that was worse. I ran a thumb along Tianjin's blade, watching my reflection ripple across its surface. My eyes were darker now, a red tint beneath the black. The same color his had been when fury overtook him. Am I doing it right? Is this what you wanted me to be? I asked softly, the question slipping out before I could stop it. The sword pulsed faintly, but gave no answer. A gust of wind blew through the ruins, scattering ashes across the altar. For a heartbeat, I thought I saw his silhouette there. Tall, composed, that familiar smirk just barely visible. You've gone too far, the illusion whispered again. I haven't gone far enough, I whispered back. And then I saw it. His hand reaching out not to stop me, but to brush the blood from my cheek. A phantom gesture. One that didn't exist. I remembered the way he used to touch my shoulder after battle. His voice low and calm even when the world burned around us. Qing, don't lose yourself, he'd said once, after a long night of fighting. At the time, I thought he meant it as advice. Now I think it was a warning. The memory hit harder than any blow. My chest tightened until I couldn't breathe. The warmth of his presence flickered, and then was gone. I exhaled slowly, staring at the blood drying on my hands. I already have, I said to no one. The rest of the sect fell easily. I moved through their halls like a shadow, silent, efficient. Screams followed me down corridors lined with scripture and incense. By dawn, not a single disciple was left alive. I stood on the temple steps as the sun rose, crimson light spilling across the landscape like fresh blood. The Radiant Heart sect's banners burned behind me, curling into ash. Somewhere, deep inside, I could still hear him laughing softly. The rare, fleeting sound that had once made everything bearable. It should have comforted me. Instead, it hollowed me out, because I realized I couldn't remember his laugh clearly anymore. The edges of it had blurred, lost beneath the noise of dying voices and the hum of my sword. "Don't fade, please," I whispered, clutching the blade. The sword thrummed, cold and alive. I felt its pulse merge with mine. One rhythm, one will. Maybe this was what love became when it rotted. Not tenderness, but obsession. Not memory, but mimicry. I had become his reflection, cruel where he had been broken, relentless where he had been human. As the flames consumed the last of the sect, I turned away. My steps echoed against the stone, slow and deliberate. When I looked down the mountain, the path ahead shimmered with heat and ash. I could almost see him there, walking ahead of me as he always did, robes trailing, sword in hand. "Wait for me, I'll finish it soon," I said. The wind carried the scent of blood and incense through the valley. Behind me, the once sacred temple collapsed in a cloud of smoke and fire. The world would wake to find another sect erased. Another chapter of righteousness turned to ruin. They'd whisper that the new demon lord had gone mad. They'd say Mo Ran had risen again, heart blacker than before. And they'd be right, because vengeance had become my devotion. Madness had become my prayer. And his name, the name of the man I loved, had become my only God. Chapter 13, The Ashes of Righteousness. The Grand Master of the Heavenly Summit sat on a throne carved from spirit jade, haloed by morning light. Once people bowed when they saw him. They whispered his name like it was sacred, the man who brought justice to the cultivation world. Today he would beg instead. The courtyard below the summit burned with the corpses of his disciples. The sacred bells that once called them to meditation now clanged in chaos. The air was thick with smoke and charred scripture. I walked through it all, Tianjun resting against my shoulder, its black light flickering with the rhythm of my pulse. The disciples who hadn't already fled dropped to their knees as I passed. Trembling, unable to meet my eyes, I reached the temple doors and kicked them open. The Grand Master rose slowly, his white robes untouched by ash, his beard long and silver like the stories said. His aura still shimmered faintly, powerful but tired. "So, the servant of the demon emperor dares to stand before the seat of heaven," he said, his voice echoing across the hall. "I'm not his servant anymore." The words came out colder than I expected. "He's gone. I'm what's left." The old man's eyes narrowed. "You've slaughtered thousands, desecrated temples, drowned this land in blood. Do you think vengeance will bring peace?" "Peace?" I laughed softly. He was 8 years old when he watched his parents die. Did you ever think about that? When you struck his name from your scriptures? When you called him demon for the sin of surviving? He didn't answer. "Say it, say their names. The Mo clan. The ones you erased." I whispered. "I did what the heavens demanded." His family dealt in forbidden arts. They were a poison to the righteous path. He said at last. I drove Tianjun into the floor beside him, splitting the jade under his feet. "The righteous path? You mean fear. You slaughtered them because you feared their strength. You feared him." For the first time, the Grandmaster flinched. I circled him slowly, my footsteps echoing against the temple floor. "He only wanted justice. You gave him fire. You made him into what you feared most. And what are you now? A ghost wearing his shadow?" he demanded. I stopped behind him. "No, I'm his vengeance." With a flick of my hand, dark chi exploded from the sword, wrapping around him like chains. He struggled, but his spiritual energy shattered on contact. The shadows tightened around his limbs, pinning him to the throne he'd ruled from for decades. Outside, the surviving disciples began to gather. Their terrified whispers drifted through the hall. I turned toward the open doors and raised my voice. "Come closer. Witness the truth your Grandmaster buried." They hesitated, then crept inside, dozens of them, their faces pale beneath the smoke. I gestured toward the bound man. "This is the savior of your righteous world. The one who murdered children in the name of purity. The one who called slaughter justice. Tell them, Grandmaster. Tell them what you did to Mo Rance clan." "I owe no explanation to demons," he hissed. The sword flared, a deep, pulsing red. He screamed as the demonic chi seared through him, carving the truth straight from his soul. The disciples gasped, watching as his spiritual core cracked under the pressure. His voice broke. I gave the order, he choked out. We killed them all, the Mo clan, because the council feared their power, because, louder, his cries echoed through the mountain. Because we feared him, because we feared what he would become. Silence. The disciples stared at their master, the man they'd worshipped, now trembling and half-burned under the weight of his own lies. I looked at him for a long time, feeling nothing. No triumph, no relief, only emptiness. You were right to fear him because even in death he won. I summoned the black flame with a thought. It burst from my hand, slow and silent, curling around his body like smoke. He screamed once. A thin, cracking sound, before the fire devoured him completely. The jade throne melted beneath him, dripping like candle wax. The disciples fell to their knees. Some wept, others prayed. None dared move. I turned away from the burning ruin that had been their master. Remember this, your heavens were built on ashes. And every time you call yourselves righteous, the ghosts you created will answer. Tianjin pulsed in my hand, its hum low and steady, almost approving. I walked out into the courtyard, where dawn was breaking through the smoke. The sunlight was red. It painted the sky like blood spilled over glass, glinting off the remains of the temple. For a heartbeat, I thought I saw him there. Mo ran. Standing at the edge of the stairs, his robes rippling in the wind. He looked at me the way he used to, that faint, unreadable smile on his lips. You did it, I imagined him saying. Almost, I whispered back. The vision faded with the smoke. Behind me, the temple continued to burn, its banners curling into black ribbons. The disciples would scatter. The world would hear of what I'd done before sunset. By tomorrow, every sect under heaven would know the truth and fear it. The righteous had fallen. The last of Mo Rant's enemies was ash, and the shadow of the demon emperor walked free beneath a blood-red sky. Chapter 14, The Empty Throne. The throne room is quiet now. Too quiet. The dark palace that once echoed with orders, steel, and screams now breathes only dust. The servants fled long ago. The soldiers who survived the wars dispersed into the shadows, afraid even to whisper my name. The demon lord's fortress stands like a mausoleum and its only ghost. I sit where Mo Ran used to sit. His throne of black jade feels wrong beneath me. Too heavy, too cold. I've never liked this seat. It was made for a man who commanded storms, not for someone pretending to be him. The firelight flickers across the hall, throwing my reflection across the floor. Pale, hollow-eyed, almost unrecognizable. Tianjin rests beside me, his sword. I keep it close, the same way he used to keep it by his bed, never letting it out of reach. The blade hums sometimes, faintly, like a sigh. Some nights I imagine it's him, watching me, scolding me, maybe even laughing the way he used to, rare and short-lived but enough to make the world pause. Are you proud of me now? I ask the sword softly. The steel gives no answer, only glows faintly in the dim light. I lean back and close my eyes. Silence stretches until memory fills it, unwanted but unstoppable. Mo Rant's voice, rough but calm. Don't hesitate when you strike. Mercy has no place in survival. The way his hand had settled over mine as he corrected my sword stance. Firm, grounding. His body always carried warmth, even when his heart didn't. I remember the night rain fell through the broken roof of the temple, soaking us both after a battle. I'd knelt beside him, patching his wounds while he glared at the storm like it had insulted him. You'll catch cold, I'd said, trying to sound calm. He'd scoffed. Demons don't get colds. Yet the next morning, he sneezed and glared at me like it was my fault. I can still hear my laughter then. Strange, genuine. It's the last sound that ever made him smile. I opened my eyes. The hall looks even emptier now. They called me the new demon lord when I took his name. But all I've done since then is build an empire of silence. I've burned temples, toppled sects, and left their bones for the crows. Every life taken was supposed to make the ache smaller. Instead, it grew slow, poisonous, filling everything. Mo ran, "You should have taken me with you that night." I whisper, tracing the black carvings on Tianjun's hilt. The sword hums again, soft and low, like a voice behind a closed door. Sometimes I dream of him, not as the cold, ruthless emperor the world feared, but as the man I followed through mountains and blood. In those dreams, he still stands with his back to me, his dark hair tied with a red ribbon that always came undone by dawn. He turns, smiles faintly, and says, "Still following me, little shadow?" And I always wake up before I can answer. The days after the Grandmaster's death blurred into nothing. I didn't bother rebuilding the sect or gathering followers. There was no point. The world had already given me everything I wanted, vengeance. But vengeance has no heartbeat, no warmth, no voice to fill the nights. Now all that's left is me and his sword. I spend my days sitting in his chair and my nights beside his bed, talking to the weapon like it's him. Sometimes I tell it stories of our travels. The Temple of Blood, the night he burned the bone crystal flame, the quiet moment he fell asleep with his head against my shoulder. I talk and talk and talk, and the sword listens, as patiently as he once did. Tonight, the moon is red, like it was the night he died. I stand and walk to the balcony overlooking the courtyard. The world stretches below, black and endless. The wind bites at my face, carrying the faint scent of rain and iron. "Do you remember this wind? You said it smelled like freedom." I said it smelled like blood. I ask the empty air. No answer, of course. A soft sound escapes me, half laugh, half sigh. "You were right, though. It was freedom. Just not yours. Not mine either." I grip the sword tighter. The edges gleam faintly under the moonlight. For a second, I almost see him again. His shadow beside mine, tall and proud, eyes that once glowed like burning stars. I speak without thinking, voice barely a whisper. "I think I loved you." The words hang there, fragile, trembling. I didn't realize it until it was too late, until your blood stained my hands. The memory crashes over me. Blood Moon Cliff, his weight in my arms, the way his breath stuttered, his fingers brushing my face as he said, "You were the only one who never betrayed me." That was his confession, wasn't it? His way of saying what neither of us could admit out loud. I sink to my knees. My chest feels too tight. I can't do this anymore. The world doesn't need another Mo Ran. It needed you. I whisper. The sword's hum deepens, a pulse like a heartbeat. Or maybe I'm imagining it. Maybe I've finally gone mad. But then again, madness is the only thing keeping me company now. I look up at the empty throne, the one I took for him, the one that means nothing without him sitting there. It's strange. After everything, the blood, the wars, the pain, it's not the vengeance that haunts me. It's the quiet moments. The way his eyes softened when he looked at me. The way he'd say my name like it was the only word left worth saying. Outside, the first drops of rain begin to fall. The storm rolls in slow, heavy, familiar. The same storm that once followed him everywhere he went. I close my eyes and let it come. In the thunder's echo, I almost hear his voice again. "You're still my shadow." Chapter 15, Reunion in Death. Blood Moon Cliff looks the same as the night it took him. The wind still howls through the peaks, carrying the smell of rain and blood. The grass here never grows green, only red, stained by all the lives that ended on this rock. I walk slowly, every step echoing through the silence. The mist rises from the valley below, thick and pale, hiding the world I've abandoned. I have not been here since that night, since he died in my arms. Tianjin hangs at my side, heavy and alive, humming faintly as if it remembers too. The sword is quieter now, tired maybe like me. When I reach the edge, I kneel. The ground is still rough, scarred with blackened soil where his blood once fell. "This is where you left me. You always did have a talent for leaving without warning." The wind answers with a low moan, curling my hair into my eyes. I draw the sword and press its tip into the ground, watching as it sinks into the earth that once drank his blood. The metal hums deep and low, like it's mourning. I rest my forehead against the hilt. My voice comes out raw. I took them all, Mo ran. Every last one. The sects, their disciples, their masters. The men who called you monster. They're all gone now. Silence. I thought I'd feel peace. I continue, my words barely holding together. I thought once it was done, I could finally breathe. But all I feel is empty. It's like I burned down the world, and there's no one left to see the ashes with me. The rain begins to fall thin, cold needles against my skin. I tilt my head back and let it hit me, eyes half closed. I used to think you were heartless. You killed without flinching, smiled without warmth, spoke like nothing mattered. But I see it now, you weren't heartless. You were hurting. You just never let anyone see. A bitter laugh slips from me. You always said demons don't cry. You were wrong again. I lift a hand and wipe at my face, but it's pointless. The tears mix with rain and blood. I don't even know when I started bleeding. There's a flask at my belt. Cheap wine, the kind Mo Ran used to mock. I pull it open and pour it onto the ground, the liquid mixing with the red soil. For you hated this stuff. Said it was for cowards who couldn't face reality. Guess I'm one of them now. The scent of the wine fills the air, sweet and bitter. I pour more, enough to soak the earth. My vision blurs as I keep talking, not to the sword anymore, but to him. I had something to tell you back then, at the temple, when you laughed at me for burning the rice. I pause, trying to breathe through the weight pressing down on my chest. I wanted to tell you that my voice breaks, that I didn't follow you out of loyalty. Not really. I followed you because you made me feel like I belonged somewhere, like I mattered. The words tremble out of me, small and helpless. I think I loved you, I say again, quieter this time. Maybe you knew, maybe you didn't, but it doesn't matter now, does it? You went somewhere I can't follow. You left me in this world alone. I grip Tianjin tighter, my knuckles white. You bastard. I choke out, half laughing through tears. You said if you died I should live, but you never said how. You never said what to do with the silence you left behind. The sword vibrates faintly. A single hum, sharp and low. I've done everything, Mo Ran. Everything you wanted. Every drop of vengeance. Every scream. Every fire. There's nothing left for me now. The wind howls louder, scattering the rain across the cliffside. I don't want to live in a world where you don't exist. I raise my head, eyes fixed on the horizon. The clouds burn red with dawn, the same red as the petals that fell when he died. I reach out and touch the sword's blade. Cuts easily, as if eager to grant my wish. Blood wells from the line across my palm and runs down to the hilt. The steel hums louder, the same sound it made when he wielded it. Alive, dangerous, beautiful. My breath comes shallow. I smile, faint and tired. Wait for me. I'm coming back, Mo Ran. This time you won't walk ahead without me. The wind stills for a heartbeat. Then I pull the sword toward me. Pain flashes white, brief, clean, almost gentle. The warmth spreads fast, flooding through me like fire and rain mixed together. I fall forward, collapsing against the blade, my head resting near the soil where he died. The world begins to fade, the storm, the wind, the blood.